Taiwan accuses China of trying to meddle in its internal affairs after Beijing set up an email tip line to report what it calls separatist thugs. Learning what to do when disaster strikes, Taiwanese civilians join a new kind of drill to prepare for the worst. Police are on alert as one of Taiwan's biggest gangs is expected to choose a new leader. Plus, now cars will be subject to U.S. tariffs, turning up the heat in an escalating global trade war. Good evening, welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Joyce Zhen. China has launched an email tip line urging people to report what it calls Taiwanese separatists. One of the people reported, Taiwan's interior minister. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council is now calling it political interference from Beijing. Leslie Liao went to the council to find out how they're responding. Leslie, what is the council saying?
Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council is reacting to China's Taiwan Affairs Office, which set up an email tip line asking people to report, and I quote, Taiwan separatist thugs and accomplices. The Taiwan Affairs Office says that it received over 300 complaints within a 9-hour period. Complaints about everyone from the Interior Minister Liu Shifang to ruling Democratic Progressive Party lawmakers to Taiwan prosecutors and even pro-independence Taiwanese influencers flooded in. Here's what the Mainland Affairs Council had to say about the Taiwan Affairs Office's new email tip line.
那我们认为这是对台湾内政的全面滋扰啊！它不但要干预台湾的政治，还要干预台湾的司法。那这不但凸显中共对台湾渗透统战的严重性啊，那也证明台湾确实有必要在各方面全面防范啊。
So quite a strong reaction from the council today.
So Leslie, what started all this? Why are we getting this reaction from China?
Taiwan's Interior Ministry handles immigration affairs, and what we're seeing is Taiwan feeling ripple effects from the departure of Chinese influencer Yaya departing Taiwan. Now, Yaya was in Taiwan on a spousal residency permit, but she was forced to leave the country on Tuesday. Immigration officials say that Yaya made social media videos advocating China taking over Taiwan by force, which threatens national security and social stability. So this could be a reaction to her forced departure. But 2 more Chinese influencers living in Taiwan have had their residency permits revoked over pro-unification videos, and they are required to leave Taiwan by March 31st. And because of these recent cases, there have been reports of hate speech and in some rare cases, death threats against Chinese spouses living in Taiwan. Now, here's what the MAC had to say about the reported hate speech.
到目前看起来就是一个孤立的事件，而且这位匿名人士到底是谁，目前也不清楚啊。所以我觉得台湾社会总的来说还是很有理性、很有秩序的一个社会。
Now, the Mainland Affairs Council says that Yaya may be allowed back into Taiwan in a limited capacity to visit family, but that's contingent on her no longer advocating for unification by force.
Thank you, Leslie. That was Leslie Liao reporting from Taipei. What would you do in the event of a catastrophic emergency? Well, a new kind of civil defense drill is helping people prepare for exactly that. More than 1,000 people gathered in Tainan for the exercises that aim to include all of society. Reese Ayers reports.
Extinguishing fires after a massive explosion and rushing civilians to safety as a tsunami approaches. Simulations of disasters that pose very real threats to Taiwan played out in the southern city of Tainan at this new kind of whole-of-society civil defense drill. It's all part of President Lai Ching-te's campaign to better prepare the country for whatever comes.
我们目的是希望能够打造台湾社会的韧性，能够妥善的因应当大自然发生天灾地变的时候。
Over 1,000 people, a mix of civilians and civil defense experts, have joined the drills. But notably absent today is the military, which usually plays a big role in disaster response.
那主要是展现在地方政府以及地方的民力，包括义警、义交这个民防，还有志工，他们对于发生灾难或是发生这个包括爆炸、包括海啸或是其他的复合性灾难的时候地方的因应状态。
One of the scenarios simulates an explosion at a tourist centre that injures hundreds of people, with much of the focus on response times and setting up medical infrastructure at short notice. More than just demonstrations, these exercises simulate real-life disasters, forcing the civilians taking part to improvise and act in real time as if it was a real disaster. And the people joining these drills say participating is their duty as citizens of Taiwan, a country under constant threat from the forces of nature and China.
因为因应就是说有一些比如说灾难的时候，那医院可能没办法正常运作，那需要把一些民间的医疗人力那集中起来做一些统筹的规划运用。
因为我们就可能真的会面对 战争的危险，当然不希望有这种战争的发生，但是以防万一，大家全民就是要互相扶持这样子。
Officials say this will be the first of many drills happening across the country as Taiwan does its best to prepare for the worst. Scott Huang, John Su, Jaime Okan, and Rees for TaiwanPlus.
Civil defense drills like these are becoming more central to Taiwan's defense strategy. But what does whole-of-society defense mean? To find out, Jaime Okan spoke to Raymond Guo, a security analyst with the Rand Corporation.
So Taiwan is jumping fully on this idea of a whole-of-society defense. What does that mean, and why is it important specifically to Taiwan?
So whole-of-society defense is actually part of a group of concepts which we might call total defense. You see this in a lot of different countries. Israel is probably the most kind of iconic example, but you also have many of the Baltic states, Finland, Singapore, even South Korea to some extent. The idea is that you're a small country facing a really big potential aggressor. How do you marshal the resources in order to be able to respond to this? How do you create defense in depth, especially when you don't have that much territory, you're facing a much larger opponent? Also, I think very critically, to be able to protect and shelter your own people. And then also to keep continuity of government operations. So not just where's your leadership, will they be okay, but also can you keep the lights on so that your society can still function, maybe at a lower level, but can still function despite a massive conflict coming at you.
When we look at the way that Taiwan responds to emergency situations like an earthquake or typhoons, we do see the military play a very big role in these kinds of operations. What is the benefit of letting the civilian side handle these kinds of situations?
So in an event of a military conflict specifically, you want your frontline troops to be at the front line. You know, if let's just say it's an invasion, well, you want the conventional forces, your best trained military forces, to be, fighting back on the beachheads and pushing the people and pushing the invaders out. The more that the military has to divert its attention towards, say, things like civilian protection or logistics, the less it's able to kind of move the most skilled troops up the chain to be at the point of combat or points of combat. The more that reserve forces or civil society can take up some of these civilian protection, logistics and resources, sustainment missions, the easier, the more the Taiwanese military can flow those forces to where they need to be.
And how does this help the average person in Taiwan who's maybe looking at this drill for the first time and wondering, what should I be doing in the event of an emergency?
Well, so it helps in a number of different ways, right? One is just if the bombs are falling, where do people go? Where should they go? I don't know if I would be able to say, and I want to be clear, this is a really difficult thing I don't think any country has ever had their civil defense system tested yet. Obviously major war, or I guess within the kind of the modern era. All the countries I mentioned earlier are still trying to figure their way through this. No one has a perfect answer. So at the very least, it's admirable that Taiwan is really kind of, the Lai administration is focusing and making this a priority.
That was Raymond Guo with the Rand Corporation. Police in Taiwan are on high alert as rumors swirl that one of the country's biggest gangs, the Bamboo Union, is getting ready to elect a new leader. The venue for the vote remains unclear, but one option was apparently inside the halls of power. John Van Trieste explains.
Tension builds outside the headquarters of the Chinese Unification Promotion Party. Dozens of police stand guard as news cameras roll. All are wondering the same thing. Will party leader and organized crime figure White Wolf show up?
我们在现场部署的60余名警力，我们针对出入大楼的人员进行相关的身份查抄。
With his support for Taiwan's unification with China and his underworld ties, White Wolf, real name Zhang Anle, is used to the attention. He's known for his high rank in one of Taiwan's biggest gangs, the Bamboo Union, and for his 10-year stint in a U.S. prison for drug smuggling. But there's a new controversy around him and his associates that has powerful people trading accusations and police across Greater Taipei on alert. Exactly what happened is unclear, but the rumor is that White Wolf and other bosses in his triad met Tuesday to vote for a new leader after their chief boss's death in February. The original venue, a restaurant inside the legislature. White Wolf himself says the gathering was for some old friends catching up, none of the rumored gang business.
大家老兄弟去帮主的事情有没有定案呢？没有。
The government abruptly shut the restaurant down for the day, forcing a change in location. But just the idea of a gang choosing its next leader inside the halls of power has caused an uproar. Some in the Democratic Progressive Party have accused Speaker Han Kuo-yu of enabling organized crime. But some in Han's party, the Kuomintang, say the restaurant is open to all. As that argument plays out, the questions become when and where the gang's election might take place. Police have spread out, but supposed plans have come out only to be canceled more than once. So far, White Wolf has been silent, and the reporters gathered outside the headquarters of his pro-China party, hoping for answers, left disappointed.
本来今天就要澄清昨天的事，就你们今天这个阵仗他就不来了，新生代的很不尊重他嘛，所以说他不可能去主导主联邦任何事情。
Police say they're still ready to pounce whenever the gang does hold a vote.
这个是挑战这个公权力。那现场如果胆敢宣布帮主事情，我们会现场做立即逮捕。那根据这个组织犯罪条例跟刑法，我们一定会采取最强力的一个作为。
But organized crime runs deep in Taiwan. In the roughly 70-year-old Bamboo Union gang, police face a persistent opponent. Andy Xue and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The Taiwan People's Party says its founder Ko Wen-je may be experiencing a kidney-related medical emergency while in detention. His party says he has blood in his urine and is experiencing nausea. His wife held a press conference calling for urgent medical care. Ko is currently in custody on corruption charges stemming from his time as Taipei mayor and alleged misuse of funds during his presidential run last year.
他是一个蛮能够忍耐的人，结果到今天他会跟我讲说，请律师转告我陈佩琪去在台北医院去帮他申请他的病历，因为他对他的那个腰痛跟那个 colic pain， 就是可能就是已经没有办法忍受。
Ko's wife is applying for medical leave for him. All cars and related parts going to the U.S. will now be subject to tariffs. It's the latest move by U.S. President Donald Trump as he looks to reset trade imbalances with other countries.
Another play in Washington's America First agenda. U.S. President Donald Trump has made good on his threat and imposed up to 25% tariffs on all auto imports to the U.S., a move Trump says makes up for American business taken away by other countries.
Over the years, they've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff.
Last year, the U.S. imported about $240 billion worth of cars, mainly from Mexico, South Korea, and Japan. Though Trump is betting the move will revive U.S. car production, auto industry experts warn the tariffs will only make foreign cars more expensive for American buyers. On top of taxing finished cars, Trump is also targeting car parts, which could even include things like screws, and put Taiwan in the crosshairs.
因为台湾出口汽车到美国是不多，但是我们出口到美国汽车零组件是很多。特别是台湾在非原厂品牌的汽车零组件这个部分，在世界竞争力是非常强的。
Like many U.S. allies and partners, Taiwan has been bracing for hits from Trump as he looks to wipe U.S. trade imbalances. Next week, Trump is set to unveil his reciprocal tariff plan, a sort of tax price match focused against nations Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has called the Dirty 15. Stopping short of listing out the countries directly, it's understood to be the top 15% of countries who run large trade surpluses with the U.S., Taiwan among them. Taipei says it cannot be sure Trump's tariffs will affect Taiwan. Lawmakers here grilling Deputy Economy Minister Cynthia Jiang, asking for a clear plan since the numbers say otherwise. Jiang remaining confident in U.S.-Taiwan ties.
因为台美的关系、经贸关系非常的密切，其实从川普还没有上任之前，我们就密切观察川普的相关的这个言论。然后呢，他上任之后，因为台美经贸沟通管道很多，我们都会跟他们说明台美经贸关系的重要性。
Taipei says it must wait for Washington's announcement set for April 2nd before making any sort of evaluation, much less a response, leaving it to Trump to make the first move. Chris Ma and Joyce Tsin for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. Democrats are demanding serious consequences after a Signal group chat blunder mistakenly added a journalist to a conversation about sensitive war plans. The Trump administration insists there was no classified information in the chat. That's despite Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg releasing more damning messages. Rosie Greninger reports.
As the Trump administration attempted to downplay the contents of a leaked Signal group chat, the journalist at the center of the storm has released more proof. Atlantic magazine editor Jeffrey Goldberg was inadvertently included in the chat amongst 18 senior cabinet leaders, discussing impending strikes on Houthi militants in Yemen. Goldberg shared a thread of messages with highly sensitive information, including details about the target of the attack, launch times, and specific weapons to be used. He claims he chose to publish this new information after the Trump administration attacked his journalistic integrity, claiming he lied about its contents.
But the mainstream media continues to be focused on a sensationalized story from the failing Atlantic magazine that is falling apart by the hour. We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread. There were no locations, no sources or methods revealed, and there were certainly no war plans discussed.
The fresh revelations have prompted some senior Trump officials to acknowledge the debacle was due to human error, including Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who both participated in the chat.
Obviously, someone made a mistake. Someone made a big mistake and added a journalist. Nothing against journalists, but you ain't supposed to be on that thing.
But both Rubio and Gabbard continue to insist there was no classified information shared. That's something military experts and Democrats disagree with, saying the information could have risked the lives of both American service members and civilians if they'd been attained by a US adversary. Democrats are pushing for there to be consequences for the major security breach.
Secretary Hegseth has disclosed military plans as well as classified information. He needs to resign immediately. He needs to resign immediately, and a full investigation needs to be undertaken with regard to whether other similar Signal chats are occurring in this administration.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has taken responsibility for creating the Signal group, but claims he didn't have the journalist's number to have added him to the chat. US President Donald Trump has not signalled any repercussions, instead continuing to downplay the situation, labelling it not a big deal.
How do you bring Hegseth into it? He had nothing to do. Look, it's all a witch hunt. Here we are talking about some of the greatest business deals ever made. The greatest companies in the world are moving into the United States, and you want to ask about whether or not Signal works.
The White House says the National Security Council and Elon Musk's team are looking into how the journalist was included in the chat, still refusing to acknowledge the magnitude of the breach and pushing back against taking any meaningful action in response to this national security blunder. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
South Korea is battling its most severe wildfires on record. As the crisis continues, the death toll has risen to at least 24. Chelsea Wu has the story.
Flames engulf South Korea's southern region as devastating wildfires continue to spread. More than 20 people have been killed and dozens more hurt, 12 in critical condition. With strong winds fueling the blaze, authorities are scrambling to contain the worst fires in the nation's history.
지난번에도 한두 개 다 막 동시다발로 막 왔었어요. 근데 그걸 딱 보니까 이게 이제 무슨 거기서 뭐 무슨 실내 체육관을 가라, 그 지역에 어떤 체육관을 가라, 그 바로 이렇게 해주잖아요. 그러니까 그거 보니까네 와 이거 진짜 이 하다가 진짜 전국이 진짜 불에 다 삼키는 게 아닌가 걱정도 되고 막 그랬어요.
The fires have displaced over 27,000 people, and around 500 inmates from a nearby prison were evacuated for safety. Thousands of emergency personnel and dozens of helicopters have been deployed to combat the blazes, but strong winds and dry conditions continue to hamper containment efforts. In the ongoing battle, a firefighting helicopter crashed, killing the pilot.
완전 폭파돼 갖고 뭐 날개고 없고 색깔 구분도 안 되고.
Wildfires were once rare in South Korea, but have increased in frequency and intensity in recent years. Experts say climate change is one reason behind the destructive trend.
기후변화 특징 중에 하나니까 이런 온도가 빨리 올라가는 거, 그다음에 건조가 계속 길어지는 거, 바람이 계속 더 심해지는 거, 이런 것들은 다 산불로 보면 굉장히 위험한 요소인 거죠. 그렇기 때문에 우리나라에서 산불은 더 많이 날 수밖에 없고 또 더 대규모로 퍼질 수밖에 없고.
Some are now calling for stronger preventive measures and a more effective response system to address what they see as a growing threat. The wildfires are a critical leadership test for Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. He was reinstated as acting president just 2 days ago, after a court overturned his suspension, part of impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol's ongoing martial law controversy.
우리나라에 주둔하고 있는 미군으로부터도 헬기의 지원을 받는 등 이러한 지원을 최대한 동원해서 진화 작업에 전력을 다하고 있습니다.
With flames continuing to spread and tens of thousands driven from their homes, the country's Forest Service has raised the national crisis alert to its highest level, as South Korea grapples with its worst natural disaster in recent memory. Its government and people are struggling to stem the blazing tide. Luffy Lee and Chelsea Wu for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's space program is one step closer to blastoff, with its rocket launch site now confirmed. Jopong Village in the country's southern Pingtung County was chosen based on its environment and development potential. Local officials say they hope the site will bring more jobs and tourism, including the creation of a space museum. Taiwan Space Agency aims to have the launch site ready by 2030. Spring is in the air in Taiwan, and its iconic cherry blossoms are blooming up on Alishan. Visitors can see them via a special mode of transport. Tiffany Wong takes us there.
All aboard the Alishan Express. This 100-year-old train is chugging along the scenic railway in southern Taiwan, giving passengers a special view of the mountain's iconic cherry blossoms.
那其实简单的讲，我们是把我们的老爷爷火车头请出来，让他载送我们的旅客3趟。那所以它的运用，它不能像平常的一个交通每天运用。其实这个是很珍贵的火车头，所以我们大概只有在特殊的一些季节或是节日，我们才来使用。
Alishan is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the country, but the view from the tracks is not something everyone gets to experience. The cherry blossom train will only run 3 times this season, and it's a 6-hour journey up the mountain, but tourists say every second is worth it.
很新奇，然后那个樱花真的很漂亮，然后那个蒸汽火车在过弯的时候，那看出去，觉得然后再搭配风景，真的很壮丽，
玩不腻，还是想来。来了10几次了，也是都会想要再来这边看一下，看它有什么变化。
The historic railway has been in operation since the Japanese colonial era. The carriages are made from cypress wood, and the steam locomotive was originally powered by coal, now modified to run on diesel instead. But maintaining the train is still difficult.
那其实修复起来非常困难，因为当初制作这个火车的一个设计这个火车的公司，其实已经都没有在营运了。那所以我们现在不管是材料啊，一些机具材料，其实都没有了，所以维修起来其实相当困难。
A relic of Taiwan's history, these trains have survived for over a century, and they're still running. And as time passes, they've outlasted those who built them and carried generations of passengers who have come to admire the view. Joseph Wu and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, here's a glimpse at a new immersive exhibition in London, taking visitors on a virtual journey through ancient Egypt. I'm Joyce Sin. Have a good evening.